You're not taking that bag. Nothing in this house belongs to you anymore. Vanessa's voice cut through the Seattle drizzle like a rusty blade. She stood in the doorway of what used to be their home, divorce papers clutched in her manicured fist, her eyes burning with a hatred that made Cole's stomach twist. Just 2 days. 2 days since they'd buried her father, Harold Blackwood, in the rain-soaked cemetery overlooking Puget Sound. 2 days since the inheritance money, $34 million, had hit her account. And now this. Vanessa, be reasonable, Cole said, adjusting his grip on the olive green duffel bag. These are my clothes, my tools, things I bought with my own money. Nothing here is yours, she screamed, spittle flying from her lips. You signed a prenup, remember? You get nothing. Behind her, Oliver and David Blackwood emerged like vultures circling carrion. Vanessa's brothers had always been decent men, at least Cole thought they were. Oliver, the older one at 42, ran a successful construction company. David, 39, taught engineering at the University of Washington. Both had loved their father deeply, but now they flanked their sister like hired muscle, their faces grim and determined. Cole, Oliver said, his voice steady but cold. Just put the bag down and walk away. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Cole Sterling had served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat engineer. He'd defused bombs while insurgents took potshots at him. He'd rebuilt bridges under fire. He'd seen men die screaming in the desert sand. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the rage that boiled up from his core as he looked at these 3 people he'd once considered family. I'm taking my clothes, he said quietly, and my grandfather's watch, and the photo of my parents, that's it. You're taking nothing, Vanessa snarled. She nodded to her brothers. Get it from him. What happened next would replay in Cole's mind for weeks. David moved first, lunging forward with surprising speed for a college professor. Cole sidestepped, but Oliver was already there, grabbing for the bag's strap. Let go. Oliver grunted, yanking hard. Cole held firm. These are my personal... David's fist caught him in the ribs, doubling him over. The bag slipped from his fingers as Oliver wrenched it away. Before Cole could recover, David grabbed a handful of his hair and dragged him toward the door. Stop, Cole shouted, struggling against the grip. His scalp burned as David hauled him across the hardwood floor like a sack of garbage. They tossed him onto the wet concrete of the driveway. Cole hit hard, rolling sideways as the rain soaked through his jacket. Blood filled his mouth where his teeth had cut his lip. He pushed himself up slowly, water dripping from his hair, his whole body shaking, not from cold, but from pure, undiluted fury. Vanessa stood in the doorway, her face flushed with vindictive satisfaction. Don't come back, she called out. Ever! You're trespassing now. Cole wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. When he spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, deadly quiet. You'll all regret this. That's a promise. They laughed. Oliver actually threw back his head and laughed, like Cole had told the funniest joke in the world. What are you gonna do, soldier boy? Vanessa taunted. Cry to your army buddies? Cole stood there in the rain, watching them, memorizing their faces, their smug expressions, the way they huddled together like conspirators. They wouldn't be laughing for long. The Sunset Motel on Aurora Avenue North wasn't much to look at. Peeling paint, neon sign missing half its letters, the kind of place where people paid by the hour and didn't ask questions. But it was cheap, it was anonymous, and it gave Cole space to think. He sat on the edge of the sagging bed, laptop open, nursing a cup of gas station coffee that tasted like motor oil. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a split lip and a bruise along his jawline where David's fist had connected. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the hollow ache in his chest. 16 years of marriage. 16 years of believing he'd found his place in the world, his family. All of it gone in the span of 48 hours. But something nagged at him, something beyond the obvious betrayal. Harold Blackwood had been a good man. Tough as nails, sure. He'd built his real estate empire from nothing, starting with a single duplex in Capitol Hill and expanding across the Pacific Northwest. But he'd been fair, generous. He'd treated Cole like a son from the moment Vanessa brought him home. You take care of my little girl, Harold had said on their wedding day, gripping Cole's shoulder with hands that were still strong despite his 73 years. She's got fire in her, but she needs someone steady, someone real. Cole had promised he would, and he'd kept that promise even when Vanessa's fire burned him. Even when she started coming home later and later from work. Even when she stopped looking at him like he mattered. Now Harold was dead, and Cole couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The old man had been stable when Cole last saw him, just 3 weeks ago. They'd shared coffee on the back deck of Harold's Magnolia house, watching the ferries cross Elliott Bay. Harold had been planning a trip to Montana to visit his old army buddy. He'd seemed normal, healthy. Then, according to Vanessa, he'd declined rapidly. 10 days of sudden weakness, confusion, difficulty breathing. The doctor called it heart failure, common enough in a man his age, especially one with Harold's history of cardiac issues. But 10 days? Harold Blackwood was a fighter. He'd survived Korea, 2 heart attacks, and cancer. He didn't just fade away. Cole opened his laptop and started typing. If there was something to find, he'd find it. He had time now. Nothing but time. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Heard what happened. Meet me at the usual spot. D. Drew Morrison. Cole's old squad mate from the 82nd Engineer Battalion. They'd stayed close after their discharge. Close enough that Drew knew about the divorce before Cole had even signed the papers. The usual spot was O'Brien's Pub in Fremont, a dive bar with good fish and chips and bartenders who minded their own business. Cole grabbed his jacket and headed out into the Seattle evening. Drew was already there when Cole arrived, nursing a pint of IPA at a corner table. He looked up as Cole approached, his expression darkening when he saw the bruises. Jesus Christ, Drew muttered. They really did a number on you. Drew Morrison was built like a linebacker, 6'4", broad shoulders, hands like ham hocks. But he had the technical mind of a surgeon, which made him one of the best cybersecurity consultants on the West Coast. He'd helped Cole set up his private security business 5 years ago, and they've been partnering on contracts ever since. I've had worse, Cole said, sliding into the booth. But thanks for coming. What do you need? Straight to business? That was Drew. Information, Cole said, about Harold Blackwood's death. Something feels off. Drew leaned back, studying his friend's face. Off how? Cole told him about the timeline, the sudden decline, the convenient timing of the inheritance hitting Vanessa's account just before she filed for divorce. You think she... Drew let the question hang in the air. I don't know what I think. Yet. But I want to know more about those last 10 days. Medical records, prescription changes, anything that might explain why a tough old soldier just gave up. Drew nodded slowly. That's a heavy accusation, brother. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just asking questions. Questions that could get us both in trouble if we're not careful. Cole met his friend's eyes. Are you in or not? Drew finished his beer in one long swallow. I'm in, but we do this smart. No cowboy stuff? Agreed. First thing, we need access to the house. Any chance you still have keys? Cole shook his head. Vanessa would have changed the locks by now. What about the security system? You set that up, right? Cole felt a spark of something. Not quite hope, but possibility. Yeah. I installed the whole network myself 3 years ago. Cameras, motion sensors, the works. And I might still have administrative access. Vanessa never understood the technical side. She might not even know I can still get in. Drew grinned. Now we're talking. What else? Harold's medical team, Dr. Rodriguez at Swedish Medical. He's been Harold's cardiologist for years. Good man. Straight shooter. Think he'll talk? If he thinks there's something wrong? Yeah. Rodriguez loved Harold like a father. They spent the next hour planning their approach. Drew would handle the digital forensics, medical records, prescription databases, anything that required serious hacking skills. Cole would work the human angle, Dr. Rodriguez, Harold's friends, anyone who might have noticed something unusual in those final days. As they prepared to leave, Drew grabbed Cole's arm. One more thing. If we find what I think we might find, are you prepared for what comes next? Cole thought about Vanessa's face as her brothers dragged him from the house. The laughter, the contempt. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm prepared. The safe house was a 2-bedroom apartment in a converted warehouse south of downtown, tucked between a coffee roastery and an auto repair shop. Cole had bought it 3 years ago through a shell company, a retreat for when security work got dangerous, or when he needed to disappear for a while. He'd never imagined he'd be hiding from his own wife. Drew arrived at midnight with a duffel bag full of equipment. Laptops, signal boosters, enough electronic surveillance gear to stock a small spy shop. He set up in the main room while Cole made coffee and tried to ignore the hollow ache in his chest. Okay, Drew said, fingers flying across 3 different keyboards. Let's see what Vanessa doesn't want us to see. The house security system was Cole's own design, a network of cameras and sensors feeding into a central server hidden in the basement utility room. Vanessa had never paid attention to the technical details. She just wanted to feel safe when Cole was away on business trips. "I'm in," Drew announced after 10 minutes of typing. She never changed the admin passwords. Rookie mistake. The main monitor filled with a grid of camera feeds. Living room, kitchen, master bedroom, Harold's old study. Most showed empty rooms, furniture draped in shadows. "Can you pull historical footage?" Cole asked. "How far back you want to go?" 2 weeks, from when Harold started getting sick. Drew's fingers danced across the keys. System keeps 30 days of rolling backup. Should be there. The timestamp in the corner rolled backward. October 15th, 14th, 13th. Cole watched the house in reverse, seeing Vanessa move through the rooms like a ghost walking backward through time. "Stop there," Cole said. October 12th. That's when she said Harold first complained about feeling weak. They watched the footage at double speed. Vanessa coming and going, alone mostly. Oliver and David visiting separately, bringing groceries, staying to talk with their father. Normal family stuff. But on October 15th, something changed. "There," Cole said, pointing at the screen. "Kitchen camera, who's that?" A man in an expensive suit was sitting at the breakfast table with Vanessa. Tall, athletic build, perfectly styled hair. Cole didn't recognize him. "Can you enhance the audio?" Drew pulled up the sound file. Vanessa's voice came through clearly. "Just a matter of time now. Days, maybe a week." The man's response was harder to make out, but Cole caught fragments. "Sure about this. Once the money clears." "Clean break. Son of a..." Drew muttered. "Who is this guy?" Cole was already reaching for his phone. He dialed Oliver's number, knowing it was late, but not caring. "Cole?" Oliver's voice was groggy, confused. "It's midnight. What? Who was Vanessa seeing before Dad died?" Silence on the other end. "Oliver, I need to know. Why are you asking?" "Because I think your sister wasn't grieving Harold's death. I think she was celebrating it." Another long pause. When Oliver spoke again, his voice was different, tighter. "There was someone. Daryl Vincent. He's a lawyer. Handles probate stuff." "Probate?" Cole felt his blood turn to ice. "As in wills and estates?" "Yeah, Dad used him for some legal work, real estate transfers, that kind of thing." Cole closed his eyes. The pieces were starting to fit together. Did Daryl know about the will? About the inheritance clause? Of course, he helped Dad draft it 2 years ago. The inheritance clause. Harold had been very specific about it. His children would only inherit if they were married at the time of his death. It was his way of encouraging family stability, of making sure his money went to people who understood commitment. Vanessa had needed to stay married just long enough for Harold to die. "Oliver," Cole said slowly, "I need you to meet me tomorrow, you and David. There's something you need to see." "What kind of something?" "The kind that's going to make you want to put your hands around your sister's throat, Doctor." Elena Rodriguez had kind eyes and steady hands, the sort of person you trusted with your life because she'd earned that trust through decades of careful, compassionate work. Cole had met her several times over the years at family gatherings, and she'd always treated him like one of Harold's own sons. Now she sat across from him in a small cafe near Swedish Medical Center, her expression troubled as she stirred cream into her coffee. "Harold's death was unexpected," she admitted. "Not the timing so much as the progression. He'd been stable for months. But something changed? His medication regimen was altered about 2 weeks before he passed. Nothing dramatic, dosage adjustments mostly. But in a patient with his cardiac history," she trailed off, leaving the implication hanging in the air. "Who authorized the changes?" Cole asked. "Vanessa did. She had medical power of attorney, remember? And the adjustments weren't unreasonable given his symptoms." "What symptoms?" "Weakness, shortness of breath, confusion, classic signs of heart failure progression." Cole leaned forward. "Dr. Rodriguez, if someone wanted to accelerate that progression, how would they do it?" The doctor's eyes sharpened. "Cole, that's a very serious question." "I know, and I wouldn't ask it if I didn't have serious concerns." She was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. Finally, she sighed. "Digitalis toxicity," she said quietly. "Harold was on a low dose of digoxin for his heart rhythm. Too much and it becomes poison. The symptoms would mirror natural heart failure, but the progression would be much faster." "How much faster?" Days instead of months, and it would be almost impossible to detect without specific blood work. Did you order those tests? I didn't have a chance. Vanessa opted for home hospice care. No more hospitals, no more tests. She said Harold wanted to die peacefully at home. Cole felt something cold crawl down his spine. And you believed her? I had no reason not to. Vanessa seemed genuinely grief-stricken. She'd call me every day with updates, asking about pain management, end-of-life care. Dr. Rodriguez paused. Actually, that was unusual. She asked a lot of questions about the digoxin, how it worked, what the therapeutic window was, what would happen if someone accidentally took too much. I thought she was just being thorough, making sure she understood his medications. Jesus. Cole, if you really think... I need you to do something for me, Cole interrupted. If Harold's body were exhumed, would toxicology tests still show digitalis poisoning? Dr. Rodriguez paled. In theory, yes, digoxin has a long half-life. But Cole, you're talking about exhuming a body. That requires a court order, probable cause. I know, but if I could get that court order, would you help? She stared into her coffee cup for a long time. When she looked up, her eyes were hard. Harold Blackwood was a good man, if someone hurt him. She nodded. Yes, I'd help. Cole drove back to the safe house with his mind racing. Drew was still at his computer bank, surrounded by empty energy drink cans and printouts covered in medical terminology. Find anything? Cole asked. Oh, I found plenty. Drew's voice was grim. Your wife's been busy. He pulled up a pharmacy database on his main screen. Vanessa's been picking up Harold's prescriptions for the last 6 months. Normal stuff mostly. But look at this. The screen showed a prescription history for Harold Blackwood. On October 10th, 5 days before he started showing symptoms, there was an entry that made Cole's blood run cold. Digoxin, 0.5 milligrams, Drew read aloud. That's more than double his normal dose. Dr. Rodriguez said she authorized dosage changes. Yeah, but look at the pickup time, 2:47 a.m. Cole frowned. What pharmacy is open at 3 in the morning? Exactly. This was picked up at an automated kiosk, the kind where you scan your insurance card and get your meds from a vending machine. Meaning no human pharmacist to question the dosage? Bingo. And get this, the prescription was called in by someone claiming to be Dr. Rodriguez's office. But I checked her office phone logs. No outgoing calls to any pharmacy on October 10th. Cole sank into a chair. So someone forged the prescription. Looking that way. But wait, it gets worse. Drew opened another window, this one showing bank records. I may have done some light hacking into Vanessa's financial accounts, for national security purposes. Drew, relax. I covered my tracks. But look at this. He pointed to a series of transactions in September and October. Regular deposits to a Cayman Islands account. About 50 grand a month. Where's the money coming from? That's where it gets interesting. The deposits are coming from Daryl Vincent's law firm, but they're not listed as legal fees. They're coded as consulting income. Cole stared at the screen. She was already moving money offshore before Harold died. Gets worse. Check out this text thread I pulled from her phone backups. A series of messages appeared on the screen, dated October 8th, a week before Harold got sick. Vanessa. Can't do this much longer. He's starting to ask questions about the money. Daryl. Just a little longer, baby. Once the old man's gone, we'll be free. Vanessa. What if someone gets suspicious? Daryl. Who's going to question a sick old man's heart giving out? Natural causes, sweetheart. Clean and simple. Cole felt rage building in his chest, like pressure in a boiler. Keep going. Drew scrolled to more recent messages, dated October 16th. Daryl. How's he doing? Vanessa. Weaker today. Rodriguez says it could be any time now. Daryl. Good. And the husband? Vanessa. Clueless as always. He actually feels sorry for me. Daryl. What about after? Vanessa. After is easy. Divorce papers are already drawn up. I just need him gone before he starts asking the wrong questions. Cole's hands were shaking now. Drew reached over and closed the laptop. There's more, Drew said quietly. A lot more. But maybe you should see your brothers-in-law first. They need to know what their sister really is. Cole nodded, not trusting himself to speak. The woman he'd loved for 16 years, the woman he'd promised to protect and cherish, had eliminated her own father for money, and she'd been planning to destroy Cole from the beginning. But Vanessa had made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated him. That was going to cost her everything. Oliver and David Blackwood sat in stunned silence as the audio played from Drew's laptop speakers. Their father's house felt like a tomb around them. Appropriate, Cole thought grimly, since they were basically sitting in a crime scene. He's dying anyway. This just speeds things up. Vanessa's voice was unmistakable. The recording was from October 14th, captured by the smart speaker in Harold's bedroom while she was on a phone call with Daryl. Drew had pulled it from the device's cloud storage. David's face had gone white. Oliver looked like he was going to be sick. "Play it again," Oliver said hoarsely. Drew complied. They listened to their sister's casual dismissal of their father's life, her excitement about the inheritance money, her plans to dump Cole as soon as the funds cleared. When it finished, David stood up abruptly and walked to the window overlooking Elliott Bay. His shoulders were shaking. 20 years, he said, without turning around. 20 years I've been defending her, making excuses for her selfishness, her cruelty, telling myself she was just complicated. "David," Oliver started. "No." David spun around, his eyes blazing. "She eliminated our father, Ollie. Our father. For money." Oliver looked at Cole. "How sure are you about this?" Cole opened the manila folder Drew had prepared. Bank records, prescription logs, text messages, medical records. The evidence of Vanessa's betrayal spread across Harold's old coffee table like a prosecutor's opening statement. "The digitalis poisoning explains everything," Cole said. "The sudden decline, the symptoms, the timing." She increased his dose gradually over a week, then gave him a massive overdose on October 15th. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed the therapeutic window. What Vanessa gave him was more than enough to stop his heart. David slammed his fist against the window frame. "That heartless—" "Easy," Oliver said, though his own voice was tight with rage. "We need to think this through." "Think what through?" David turned back to them. "We call the police. We have her arrested. We don't have enough," Cole interrupted. "Not yet. Everything we have is circumstantial. Good lawyers, and Daryl is apparently a good lawyer, could argue coincidence, misunderstanding, legitimate medical decisions gone wrong." "So what do you suggest?" Cole looked at both brothers. "We get more evidence. We get them on record. We make them confess." "How?" Drew leaned forward. "We set a trap." Over the next 2 hours, they planned their approach. It had to be perfect. One chance to get Vanessa and Daryl to reveal the truth in a way that couldn't be explained away or dismissed. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Oliver would call Vanessa, tell her he was having second thoughts about Cole's accusations. He'd arranged to meet her somewhere private, somewhere they could talk without interruption, somewhere Drew could set up surveillance equipment. "She'll be suspicious," Oliver warned. "Maybe," Cole agreed, "but she's also arrogant. She thinks she's fooled everyone. That arrogance will be her downfall." David was pacing again. "What if she doesn't take the bait? Then we go to plan B, which is—" Cole's smile was cold. "I have a conversation with Daryl Vincent, the kind of conversation that motivates honesty." Oliver frowned. "Cole, you can't— I'm not going to hurt him. Much. But Daryl struck me as the type who values his pretty face and his expensive suits. Sometimes the threat of violence is more effective than violence itself." They set the meeting for the next evening. Oliver would tell Vanessa he wanted to discuss family business at the old family cabin on Lake Chelan. Isolated, private, perfect for recording equipment. As they prepared to leave, David grabbed Cole's arm. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "What we did to you the other day, throwing you out like that, I'm ashamed. You were protecting your sister. I understand." "No, you don't." David's eyes were haunted. "I enjoyed it. Hurting you. I've been jealous of you for years. The way Dad treated you like a son, the way you belonged in this family when I always felt like an outsider. When Vanessa said you were trying to steal from us," he shook his head. "I wanted an excuse to hurt you." Cole studied the younger man's face. David had always been the artistic one, the sensitive one. It must have cost him to admit this. "You were protecting your family," Cole repeated. "That's what good men do." Even when family doesn't deserve protection? Cole thought about Vanessa, about 16 years of marriage that had apparently been a lie from the beginning. "Especially then," he said. They shook hands. Brothers again, bonded by betrayal and the promise of justice. As Cole drove back to the safe house, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I know what you're planning. Meet me at Pike Place at midnight. Come alone. V." Cole stared at the message. Vanessa had somehow figured out they were on to her. which meant their carefully laid plans were about to go straight to hell. He made a U-turn and headed for the market. Some conversations couldn't wait. Pike Place Market after hours was a different world. The crowds were gone, the vendors shuttered, the famous fish-throwing stalls silent and dark. Only the security lights remained, casting long shadows between the empty booths and creating a maze of hidden corners perfect for clandestine meetings. Cole found Vanessa near the brass pig statue, her silhouette stark against the neon glow of the city beyond. She wore a long black coat that made her look like a wraith, and when she turned to face him, her eyes held a coldness he'd never seen before. "Hello, husband," she said, her voice carrying an edge that could cut glass. "Vanessa." Cole kept his distance, his hands visible. He wasn't armed, but something about her posture suggested she might be. "You wanted to talk? I wanted to give you a chance. One last chance to walk away and forget whatever fairy tale you've cooked up about my father's death." "Fairy tale?" Cole stepped closer, close enough to see the stress lines around her eyes. "Is that what you call digitalist poisoning?" She didn't flinch, didn't show any surprise that he knew. That confirmed it. She'd been monitoring his activities somehow. "My father died of heart failure," she said calmly. "Natural causes. There's a death certificate to prove it." Death certificates can be wrong, especially when the attending physician doesn't know to look for specific toxins. Vanessa smiled, and it was like watching a predator bare its teeth. Even if that were true, and I'm not saying it is, who would believe you? A bitter ex-husband making wild accusations after a messy divorce. You have no credibility, Cole. No evidence, no case. I have phone records, bank records, security footage. You have illegally obtained materials that would be inadmissible in court. Drew Morrison's hacking skills are impressive, but they don't make for compelling legal arguments. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Seattle night air. You've been watching us. Daryl has connections. Security consultants, private investigators, people who specialize in making problems disappear. We know about your little safe house. We know about your meeting with Dr. Rodriguez. We know about everything. She took a step closer, and Cole caught a glimpse of something metallic in her coat pocket. Here's what's going to happen, she continued. You're going to sign an agreement stating that you won't pursue any legal action related to my father's estate or his death. In return, I'll give you $50,000, enough to start over somewhere far from Seattle. And if I refuse? Her smile widened. Then you'll have an accident, a tragic fall maybe, or a random mugging gone wrong. These things happen to people who ask too many questions. Cole stared at her, this woman he'd shared a bed with for 16 years. You really would have me eliminated? Without hesitation. She pulled her hand partially from her pocket, revealing the grip of a small pistol. I've worked too hard for this money to let some washed-up soldier ruin everything. What about Oliver and David? Are you planning to eliminate them too? Something flickered in her eyes, uncertainty, maybe even fear. My brothers will come around. They always do. Not this time. Cole reached slowly into his jacket, watching her tense. This time, they know the truth. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. Vanessa's voice filled the empty market. He's dying anyway. This just speeds things up. Her face went white. That's taken out of context. Really? Let's hear some more context. Another tap, another recording. Once the old man's gone, we'll be free. Daryl's voice this time, followed by Vanessa's laughter. Stop, she whispered. But Cole kept playing recordings. Text messages, phone calls, bank transfers. 16 minutes of evidence that painted a picture of premeditated patricide, motivated by greed. When the final recording ended, Vanessa was shaking. You can't prove anything, she said, but her voice lacked conviction now. Maybe not beyond a reasonable doubt, but I don't need to prove it in criminal court. Civil court has a much lower standard of evidence, preponderance of the evidence, and I have plenty of that. Cole took another step closer. Here's what's really going to happen, Vanessa. You're going to confess. All of it. How you poisoned Harold, how you planned to frame me, how you've been stealing money with your boyfriend. And you're going to do it in front of Oliver and David. Never. Then I'll destroy you piece by piece. I'll sue you for Harold's wrongful death. I'll have his body exhumed for toxicology tests. I'll turn over everything I have to the IRS, the FBI, and the King County Prosecutor's Office. I'll make sure every newspaper in Seattle knows that Vanessa Blackwood eliminated her own father for money. Her hand tightened on the gun. You're threatening me. I'm promising you. The same promise I made when your brothers threw me out of the house. You'll regret what you did. All of it. They stood there in the shadow of the market, two people who had once promised to love each other until death, now facing each other as enemies. The city lights sparkled around them like fallen stars, beautiful and cold. Finally, Vanessa lowered her weapon. You want a confession? She said quietly. Fine, but not here. Not like this. Where then? The cabin, Lake Chelan, tomorrow night. Bring Oliver and David if you want. But this ends there one way or another. She turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty market. Cole watched her go, knowing that tomorrow night would determine whether justice was served or whether Vanessa Blackwood would disappear into the shadows with $34 million of blood money. Either way, it would end soon. The Blackwood family cabin sat on the shores of Lake Chelan like a monument to happier times. Harold had built it himself in the 1980s, back when his children were young and the family actually enjoyed each other's company. Now it felt like a mausoleum, dark windows staring out at the water like dead eyes. Cole arrived first an hour before sunset. Drew was already there, hidden in the tree line with enough surveillance equipment to record a congressional hearing. Oliver and David would arrive separately, maintaining the fiction that this was a family meeting to discuss their concerns about Cole's accusations. The plan was simple. Get Vanessa talking, get her on record, and hope she revealed enough to build a case that would stick in court. What Cole didn't expect was for her to bring backup. The black Mercedes that pulled into the gravel driveway carried 3 passengers, Vanessa, Daryl Vincent, and a man Cole didn't recognize. The stranger was built like a professional athlete, all sharp angles and controlled movement. When he got out of the car, his jacket fell open enough to reveal a shoulder holster. Professional muscle? Drew's voice crackled through Cole's earpiece. These people aren't playing games. Cole watched from the cabin's front window as the trio approached. Vanessa looked composed, almost serene. Daryl appeared nervous, his eyes darting between the cabin and the surrounding woods. The hired gun just looked bored. They came up that front steps together. Cole opened the door before they could knock. Vanessa, gentlemen. Cole! She pushed past him into the main room, followed by her companions. I hope you don't mind that I brought some friends. Daryl, you know. This is Marcus Webb. He's here to make sure our conversation stays civil. Marcus nodded politely, but his dead eyes suggested civility wasn't his specialty. Where are my brothers? Vanessa asked, settling into one of Harold's old leather chairs like she owned the place. They'll be here soon. We have time to talk. Daryl cleared his throat. Before we begin, I should mention that anything said here tonight is protected by attorney-client privilege. As Vanessa's legal counsel, you're not her counsel. Cole interrupted. You're her co-conspirator. There's a difference. Marcus shifted slightly, his hand moving closer to his jacket. Cole made note of the movement but didn't react. Drew was watching through a sniper scope. If things went bad, Marcus would be neutralized before he could draw his weapon. Let's skip the legal posturing, Cole continued. We all know why we're here. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, studying him. Do we? Because I'm still not sure what you think you're accomplishing. I'm accomplishing justice for Harold, for the 16 years you wasted of my life, for the family you destroyed. The family I destroyed? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Cole, you destroyed this family the day you married into it. You were never one of us. You were just some sad, broken soldier that I felt sorry for. Is that why you stayed married to me? Pity? I stayed married to you because I needed to be married. The inheritance clause, remember? Dear old Dad was very specific about that. Cole felt something click into place. How long have you been planning this? What, Dad's death? Oh, years. Ever since he wrote that ridiculous will, my children must understand the value of commitment. What a joke. Daryl was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Vanessa, maybe we should... Should what? Stop telling the truth? She turned to Cole with vicious satisfaction. You want to know the truth, husband? I've been planning to get rid of both of you for years. Dad was just first on the list. How? How do you think? A little extra medication here, a little stress there. Old men have heart attacks all the time, especially old men who discover their daughters have been borrowing against their estates. Cole's blood turned to ice. He found out about the money transfers. About 3 weeks before he died. Caught Daryl and me in his study one night going through his financial records. Poor Dad. He actually thought we were trying to help him organize his affairs. She was enjoying this now, reveling in the confession. Cole realized she'd been holding this secret for so long that finally telling someone, even him, felt like a release. What did he say when he found out? He threatened to call the police. Can you imagine? His own daughter, and he was going to have me arrested. Her voice turned cold. So I made sure he couldn't call anyone. By poisoning him. By giving him the medication he needed. Just more of it than usual. Much more. Daryl had gone pale. Vanessa, stop talking. But she wasn't listening. Years of rage and resentment were pouring out of her like poison from a lanced wound. You know what the funny part is? She continued. He kept asking for you in those final days. Where's Cole? I need to talk to Cole. Even dying, he trusted you more than his own children. Why didn't you let me see him? Because he was going to tell you everything. About the money, about what he'd discovered, about his suspicions. She leaned forward. Harold Blackwood was a lot of things, but he wasn't stupid. He knew someone in the family was stealing from him, and he knew it wasn't you. The front door opened and Oliver and David walked in. They stopped short when they saw Marcus, but Cole gestured for them to stay quiet. Keep talking, Cole said to Vanessa. Why? So you can record everything and run to the police? I'm not stupid either, Cole. I know you're wearing a wire. She was wrong about that. The recording equipment was all external, hidden in the walls and ceiling by Drew, but Cole didn't correct her. Then why are you telling me all this? Because it doesn't matter. She smiled again, that predatory expression that chilled him to the bone. Marcus here is going to make sure you don't leave this cabin alive. All three of you. Oliver stepped forward. Vanessa, what the hell? Sit down, brother. You too, David. It's time you heard the whole story. David was staring at his sister like he'd never seen her before. You really did it. You really eliminated Dad. I liberated us from a tyrant who would have controlled our lives from beyond the grave. That inheritance clause was just the beginning. He had plans to manipulate us for decades with that money. He loved us, David shouted. He loved controlling us. There's a difference. Oliver's face was gray with shock. How could you do this? How could you take our father away from us? I gave you $34 million, you ungrateful fool. The least you could do is say thank you. Marcus cleared his throat. Ma'am, maybe we should wrap this up. Vanessa nodded. You're right. Marcus, if you would... She never finished the sentence. Drew's voice crackled through Cole's earpiece. Sniper on the ridge, west side. Take cover now. Cole dove sideways, tackling Oliver to the floor as the cabin's front window exploded in a shower of glass. Marcus spun toward the broken window, his gun already in his hand, but a second shot punched through his chest and dropped him like a stone. What the hell? Daryl scrambled for cover behind Harold's old desk. Vanessa hadn't moved. She sat in her chair, calm as death, watching the chaos unfold around her. Insurance, she said quietly, in case Marcus proved unreliable. Cole realized with crystal clarity that Vanessa had never intended for any of them to leave the cabin alive. Not him, not her brothers, not even her own co-conspirators. The hired gun on the ridge was her real plan. Eliminate everyone who knew the truth, make it look like a violent confrontation gone wrong. But she'd made one crucial error in her calculations. Drew Morrison had been preparing for this possibility from the moment they'd started planning, and Drew Morrison never came to a gunfight with just one rifle. The lights went out suddenly, plunging the cabin into darkness. Emergency flares began popping outside, filling the night with red chemical light, and somewhere in the woods, Drew was hunting. Game on, Cole whispered. The darkness was absolute inside the cabin, broken only by the hellish red glow of the flares outside. Cole pressed himself against the wall next to the shattered window, listening to the sound of Daryl's panicked breathing from behind the desk and Vanessa's unnaturally calm humming. She was humming. In the middle of a firefight, with her hired muscle bleeding out on the hardwood floor, Vanessa Blackwood was humming a lullaby. Oliver, Cole whispered. David, you hurt? We're okay. Oliver's voice came from somewhere near the fireplace. What the hell is happening? Before Cole could answer, another gunshot echoed from the woods, followed by a scream that cut off abruptly. Drew's voice crackled through the earpiece. One down, but there's at least two more out there. These people came prepared. Cole wasn't surprised. Vanessa had been planning this for years. She wouldn't rely on a single sniper to clean up loose ends. She'd have backup plans for her backup plans. "How many people did you bring, Vanessa?" he called out across the darkened room. "Enough." Her voice was still maddeningly calm. "You always underestimated me, Cole. Even after 16 years of marriage, you never really saw who I was." "I saw exactly who you were. I just hoped I was wrong." Sweet, naive Cole. Always looking for the best in people, even when they show you their worst. Another gunshot. This one, much closer. The bullet punched through the cabin's log wall just inches from Cole's head, sending splinters flying. "Drew," Cole whispered into his mic. "Talk to me." "Working on it. These guys are pros. They've got night vision, suppressed weapons, coordinated movement, military training, probably mercenaries." "How many?" "I count 3 still active. 2 flanking from the north. 1 providing overwatch from the south ridge." Cole processed this information quickly. The cabin had 4 exits: front door, back door, side door to the deck, and a basement entrance that connected to an old root cellar. If Drew could keep the shooters occupied for a few minutes, Cole might be able to get Oliver and David out through the basement, but that would mean leaving Vanessa and Daryl behind. "You know what your problem is, Cole?" Vanessa's voice drifted across the room like smoke. "You always played by the rules. Honor, integrity, all those Boy Scout virtues. They make you predictable. And being a psychopath makes you unpredictable? It makes me effective." Cole heard movement near the back of the cabin, someone trying to force the rear door. He signaled to Oliver and David, pointing toward the basement stairs. They began moving carefully through the darkness, using the furniture for cover. "Tell me something, Vanessa," Cole said, keeping his voice conversational to mask their movement. "Is any of it real? Our marriage? The life we built together? The sex was real. You were always good at that, but everything else?" She laughed softly. "I'm a very good actress, Cole. I made you believe you were loved because that's what you needed to function. Pathetic, really." David made a small sound of disgust from across the room. Vanessa's cruelty was systematic, calculated to inflict maximum psychological damage. "What about Harold? Did you ever love him?" "I loved his money. I loved the opportunities it represented. I loved the freedom it would give me once he was gone." "And your brothers?" "Useful idiots. Oliver with his construction company, David with his academic connections. They'll be missed, but not irreplaceable." Cole heard Oliver's sharp intake of breath. Even knowing what Vanessa was, hearing her dismiss their lives so casually was still shocking. The back door splintered open, and tactical lights began sweeping the cabin's interior. Cole grabbed Harold's old hunting rifle from above the fireplace and put 3 shots through the doorway. Someone cursed in what sounded like Russian. "Drew, I need an exit strategy." "Root cellar, 100 yards northeast of the cabin, hidden under the old woodshed. Comes up outside their perimeter." Cole began moving toward the basement stairs, motioning for the brothers to follow. But as he reached the top step, Vanessa's voice stopped him cold. "If you leave me here, Cole, you'll never find the rest of the money." He turned back. "What money? You think 34 million was all of it? Dad was worth closer to 60 million. The rest is hidden offshore in accounts only I can access." "Vanessa," Daryl's voice carried a warning. "Shut up, Daryl. This is between me and my husband." Cole crept closer to her voice, using the darkness as cover. "Where is it?" "Safe, secure, and completely inaccessible without me alive to provide the access codes." "What are you proposing?" "A deal. Get me out of here alive, and I'll split the hidden money with you. $30 million, Cole. Enough to disappear forever, start a new life anywhere in the world." It was tempting, Cole had to admit. 30 million would solve a lot of problems. But it would also make him complicit in Harold's elimination, and that was a line he wouldn't cross. "No deal," he said quietly. "Your loss." The tactical lights were getting closer, sweeping methodically through the cabin's main room. Cole could hear boots on the hardwood, moving with professional precision. "Last chance, Cole. Walk away now, and I'll make sure the shooters let you live." "Counteroffer," Cole replied. "Surrender now. Confess to Harold's demise, and I'll make sure you live long enough to stand trial." "Not acceptable." Cole shrugged in the darkness. "Then I guess we're done talking." He fired the hunting rifle twice more, providing cover as Oliver and David disappeared down the basement stairs. Then he followed them into the blackness below, leaving Vanessa and Daryl to face whatever justice awaited in the shadows. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, Drew's voice crackled through his earpiece one more time. "Package inbound. ETA 2 minutes." "What package?" The kind that wears badges and carries arrest warrants. Time to go, brother. Cole smiled grimly as he followed the Blackwood brothers through the root cellar tunnel. The cavalry was coming, and Vanessa's long night was just beginning. The King County Courthouse stood like a monument to blind justice, its marble columns catching the morning light as Cole climbed the steps alongside Oliver and David Blackwood. 3 months had passed since the confrontation at Lake Chelan. 3 months of depositions, evidentiary hearings, and pretrial motions. Today was the day Vanessa would finally face judgment. The courtroom was packed. Harold's friends filled the gallery. Business associates, charity board members, people whose lives he touched over 7 decades. Dr. Rodriguez sat in the front row, her testimony having been crucial in establishing the medical evidence of digitalist poisoning. Vanessa entered in shackles, wearing an orange jumpsuit that made her look smaller, diminished. The designer clothes and perfect makeup were gone, replaced by the harsh reality of county jail. But her eyes still held that cold intelligence, that calculating awareness that had made her so dangerous. Daryl Vincent sat at a separate defense table with his own attorney. He tried to cut a deal early on, confession in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Vanessa had somehow convinced him to fight the charges. Big mistake. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison. Judge Morrison was Drew's aunt, though she'd recused herself from any direct involvement in the case to avoid conflict of interest. The actual presiding judge was Kenneth Yamamoto, a 60-year-old former prosecutor known for his meticulous attention to evidence and his intolerance for courtroom theatrics. The State of Washington versus Vanessa Marie Blackwood, the clerk announced. Case number 2024, CR 5847. Charges include first-degree homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, elder abuse, financial fraud, and attempted aggravated battery. The prosecutor, Maria Santos, was a rising star in the DA's office. She'd built her reputation on white-collar crime cases, but she'd never prosecuted anything quite like this. Your Honor, Santos began, the state will prove that the defendant systematically poisoned her 73-year-old father with digitalis over a period of 10 days, causing his death on October 20th of last year. We will further prove that this act was premeditated, motivated by greed, and carried out in conspiracy with co-defendant Daryl Vincent. Vanessa's attorney, a high-priced defense specialist named Richard Morse, looked confident as he approached the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about grief, family dysfunction, and a bitter ex-husband's desperate attempt at revenge. Harold Blackwood died of natural causes, heart failure brought on by age and existing medical conditions. What you're going to hear over the next week is a conspiracy theory built on circumstantial evidence, illegal surveillance, and the vindictive fantasies of a man who couldn't accept that his marriage was over. Cole watched from the gallery as the opening statements concluded. Morse was good. He'd turned Cole into the villain of the story, the bitter ex-husband manufacturing evidence to destroy his ex-wife. It was a smart strategy, and it might have worked if they didn't have so much hard evidence. The prosecution's case unfolded methodically over the next 4 days. Dr. Rodriguez testified about Harold's medical condition and the suspicious changes to his medication regimen. A toxicologist from the FBI crime lab explained how digitalist poisoning could mimic natural heart failure, and how the levels found in Harold's exhumed remains were far beyond therapeutic doses. Drew testified about the digital evidence. Bank records, text messages, prescription databases. He'd cleaned up his hacking methods for court, presenting only evidence that had been legally obtained or properly subpoenaed. Oliver and David testified about their sister's behavior in the weeks following their father's death. Her lack of grief, her immediate filing for divorce, her obvious relationship with Daryl Vincent. But the most damaging testimony came from Marcus Webb. The hired muscle had survived his chest wound at Lake Chelan, and facing 25 to life for attempted homicide, he'd decided to cooperate with the prosecution. His testimony was clinical, matter of fact. Miss Blackwood hired me through an intermediary to eliminate 3 witnesses who she claimed were blackmailing her. The targets were her ex-husband Cole Sterling and her 2 brothers, Oliver and David Blackwood. Payment was $50,000 each, plus expenses. And what were you supposed to do with the bodies? Santos asked. Make them disappear. Miss Blackwood suggested a boat accident on Lake Chelan. Bodies would likely never be recovered in water that deep. Vanessa's attorney objected repeatedly, but the damage was done. The jury had heard, in plain language, that Vanessa had hired professionals to eliminate her own family members. The defense's case was weaker. They called character witnesses who testified to Vanessa's charitable work and community involvement. They brought in a medical expert who suggested Harold's death could have been natural, caused by an accidental overdose or medication interaction. But they couldn't explain away the text messages, the financial records, or the surveillance footage of Vanessa meeting with Daryl to plan her father's demise. On the final day of testimony, Morse made a last-ditch effort to paint Cole as the real villain. Mr. Sterling, isn't it true that you broke into the defendant's home computer system without permission? I accessed security equipment that I had installed and maintained, Cole replied calmly. Equipment that was still partially registered in my name. Equipment you used to spy on your estranged wife? Equipment I used to investigate what I believed was the suspicious death of my father-in-law. A man you hoped to inherit money from? Cole's eyes hardened. Harold Blackwood changed his will 3 years ago to remove me as a beneficiary. I stood to inherit nothing from his death, unlike your client, who inherited $34 million. But you were angry about being removed from the will. I was hurt, but I understood Harold's reasoning. He wanted his money to go to his children, not his son-in-law. I respected that decision. Respected it enough to frame his daughter for his death? Cole leaned forward. Mr. Morse, I didn't frame anyone. I simply uncovered the truth about what your client did to a good man who trusted her. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, their faces were grim. Has the jury reached a verdict? Judge Yamamoto asked. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of first-degree homicide, how do you find? Guilty. Vanessa's face didn't change, but Cole saw her hands clench into fists. On the charge of conspiracy to commit homicide? Guilty. On the charge of elder abuse? Guilty. On the charge of financial fraud? Guilty. On the charge of attempted aggravated battery? Guilty. Judge Yamamoto set sentencing for the following week. As the bailiffs prepared to lead Vanessa back to her cell, she turned and looked directly at Cole. This isn't over, she mouthed silently. Cole met her gaze steadily. Yes, he said, loud enough for her to hear. It is. 6 months later, Cole stood in the driveway of the house that had once been his home, watching the moving truck pull away. The new owners, a young couple with 2 small children, waved from the front porch where Vanessa had once stood screaming at him about property rights. The house looked different now, lighter somehow, as if a dark cloud had finally lifted. Vanessa was serving life without parole at the Washington Corrections Center for Women. Daryl Vincent had received 25 years for conspiracy and financial fraud. The hired guns from Lake Chelan were either dead or facing their own lengthy prison sentences. Harold's estate had been settled, with Cole receiving a small bequest that Harold had hidden in a separate trust. One final gift from a man who'd seen through his daughter's lies earlier than anyone realized. The bulk of the money had gone to Harold's favorite charities, as he'd always intended. Oliver and David had used their inheritance to start a foundation in their father's name, funding medical research and veteran support services. They'd asked Cole to serve on the board, and he'd accepted. Family, it turned out, wasn't always about blood. Cole's phone buzzed. A text from Drew. Beer tonight? O'Brien's usual table? Cole smiled and typed back. Absolutely. As he climbed into his truck, Cole caught sight of movement in his rearview mirror. A familiar figure stood at the end of the block, watching him. Vanessa, in a scratched-up Toyota, her face gaunt and desperate. But that was impossible. Vanessa was in prison, serving life without parole. Cole blinked, looked again. The car was gone. Stress, he told himself. The mind playing tricks after months of testimony and trial preparation. Vanessa couldn't hurt anyone anymore. But as he drove away, Cole couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the shadows, someone was still watching, still planning, still hungry for revenge. The game, it seemed, wasn't over after all. The law office of Sterling and Associates occupied the top floor of a gleaming tower in downtown Seattle, its windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. Cole had built his private security firm into one of the most respected in the Pacific Northwest, specializing in corporate investigations and family protection services. He was reviewing a case file when his secretary buzzed through on the intercom. Mr. Sterling. There's someone here to see you. Says she's an old friend. Cole looked up from his paperwork. Did she give a name? She said you'd know her. Medium height, blonde hair, very intense eyes. Cole's blood turned to ice. He reached slowly for the desk drawer where he kept his service weapon. Send her in, Patricia, but stay close to your panic button. The door opened, and Vanessa Blackwood walked into his office. She looked different, thinner, harder, with premature gray streaks in her hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of years spent in concrete cells. She wore a simple black dress and carried a leather briefcase that she set carefully on the floor beside his desk. "Hello, Cole," she said, settling into the client chair like she belonged there. "You look well. Success suits you. You're supposed to be in prison." "I was, for 4 years, 8 months, and 16 days. But it turns out the justice system isn't as ironclad as we thought. Appeals courts, constitutional violations, prosecutorial misconduct. There are so many ways for a conviction to fall apart if you know the right people." Cole's hand inched toward the desk drawer. "What do you want, Vanessa?" "To finish our conversation, the one we started at Lake Chelan." She smiled, and it was the same predatory expression he remembered from that night at Pike Place Market. "You destroyed my life, Cole. My family, my freedom, my future. Everything I worked for, gone because you couldn't accept that our marriage was over. Your marriage was over the day you decided to poison your father. My father was a controlling, manipulative old man who used his money to keep his children in line. I freed us from that. You eliminated him for inheritance money. I eliminated him because he was going to destroy everything I'd built with Daryl, everything I'd planned for our future." Cole studied her face, looking for signs of the madness that had driven her to multiple felonies. But Vanessa seemed perfectly calm, perfectly rational, which somehow made her even more terrifying. "How did you get out?" he asked. "Good lawyers. Better than the ones I had at trial. It turns out some of your friend Drew's digital evidence was obtained through illegal means. Fruit of the poisonous tree, the appeals court called it. Without that evidence, the prosecution's case fell apart." Cole felt sick. All those months of investigation, all that careful work to build an airtight case, undone by technicalities. "So you're free. Completely. All charges dismissed with prejudice. They can't even retry me for the same crimes." She leaned forward. "Which brings us to why I'm here. I'm listening. You cost me 5 years of my life. 5 years in a cage, surrounded by animals, eating slop, wearing rags. 5 years of hell because you couldn't mind your own business. Harold was my business. He was family. He was my father. And what I did to him was between us." Cole's fingers found the grip of his pistol. "If you're here for revenge, oh, I am. But not the kind you're thinking." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick manila folder. "I'm here to destroy you the same way you destroyed me. Methodically, legally, completely." She slid the folder across his desk. Cole opened it with his free hand, keeping his eyes on Vanessa while he scanned the contents. Financial records, bank statements, investment portfolios, tax returns, his tax returns. "Where did you get these?" "I told you, I know the right people now. People who specialize in making problems for other people. Your little security firm has been very successful, Cole. Almost suspiciously successful." Cole's heart began to race as he saw where this was headed. 7-figure contracts with defense contractors. Consulting fees from companies with federal security clearances. Income that seems awfully high for a small private investigation firm. "Everything I've done is legal." "Is it? Because according to my new friends at the Treasury Department, you've been classifying personal expenses as business deductions. That cabin you bought in Montana? Supposedly a secure communications facility. The armored SUV? Essential security equipment. The vacation to Cabo with your girlfriend? Liaison work with Mexican security consultants." Cole's mouth went dry. "You can't prove any of that." "I don't have to prove it. I just have to give the IRS enough questions to start an audit. And audits, as you know, have a way of uncovering all sorts of interesting irregularities." She reached into the briefcase again and pulled out more documents. "Then there's the matter of your federal security clearance. Some very interesting discrepancies in your background check applications. Undisclosed foreign contacts, incomplete financial disclosures, relationships with individuals of questionable character." "What relationships?" "Drew Morrison, for one. Did you know he's been selling surveillance equipment to some very unsavory clients? Drug dealers, arms traffickers, people who pay well for high-end electronic countermeasures? The FBI has been watching him for months." Cole felt the walls closing in around him. "Drew would never..." "Never what? Never break the law to help a friend? Never compromise his principles for money? We both know better than that, Cole. We both know what people are capable of when they're desperate." She stood up, smoothing her dress with hands that were perfectly steady. Here's what's going to happen, she continued. Tomorrow morning, the IRS will receive an anonymous tip about irregularities in your tax filings. The FBI will get a similar tip about your security clearance violations. The state bar will hear about potential ethical violations in your investigation work. You can't. I can. And I will. By this time next week, Sterling and Associates will be shuttered. You'll be facing federal charges for tax evasion and fraud. Your security clearance will be revoked. Your assets will be frozen pending investigation. Cole drew his weapon, pointing it at Vanessa's chest. Get out. She smiled again, utterly unafraid. Shooting me won't change anything, Cole. The wheels are already in motion. My associates have their instructions. If anything happens to me, if I don't check in every 12 hours, everything gets released to every relevant agency simultaneously. Then what do you want? I want you to suffer the way I suffered. I want you to lose everything, your business, your money, your freedom, your reputation. I want you to spend the next 5 years in a federal prison, wondering how your life fell apart so completely. She picked up her briefcase and walked toward the door. As she reached it, she turned back. Oh, and Cole, your girlfriend Sarah, the prosecutor who helped put me away, she's going to receive some very interesting photographs tomorrow. Pictures of you with other women during your supposed exclusive relationship. Her career prospects will be significantly dimmed by the scandal. Sarah and I weren't exclusive when those photos were taken. Weren't you? The timestamps suggest otherwise. But even if they didn't, the court of public opinion rarely bothers with such fine distinctions. She opened the door, then paused again. You know what the funny thing is? I actually learned something in prison. Patience. The value of playing the long game, taking time to plan properly, to anticipate every contingency. Vanessa, you should have taken the deal I offered you that night at Pike Place Market. $50,000 and a clean slate. It would have saved us both a lot of trouble. She walked out, leaving Cole alone with his weapon drawn and his world crumbling around him. For a long moment, he sat there in the silence of his office, listening to the sound of traffic far below and watching the late afternoon light play across Elliott Bay. Everything he'd built, everything he'd worked for was about to be torn down by a woman who'd spent 5 years in prison planning her revenge. But Vanessa had made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed Cole would be the same man she'd married 16 years ago, honorable, law-abiding, willing to play by rules even when his enemies didn't. She was wrong. Cole reached for his phone and dialed a number he'd hoped never to use. Blackwater Solutions, a gruff voice answered. This is Cole Sterling. I need to speak with Marcus Webb. Webb's unavailable. He's doing 25 to life in Walla Walla. Then I need to speak with someone who can handle a problem like the one Webb was supposed to solve 5 years ago. There was a long pause. What kind of problem? Cole looked out at the city where he'd built his life, where he'd found success and happiness after 16 years of marriage to a sociopath. The kind that requires a permanent solution, he said quietly. The game wasn't over after all, but this time, Cole intended to win. 6 months later, Vanessa Blackwood's body was found in her Lake Union houseboat, apparently the victim of a break-in gone wrong. The investigation revealed that she'd been living under an assumed identity, using fraudulent documents to hide from creditors and former associates who'd lost money in her various schemes. Detective Ray Chen of the Seattle Police Department filed his report with a heavy heart. Vanessa had been a monster, but she'd also been someone's daughter, someone's sister. Her death brought no joy, only the grim satisfaction of knowing that her reign of terror was finally over. Cole Sterling was questioned as part of the routine investigation, given his history with the deceased. He had an airtight alibi. He'd been in Montana at his legitimate business retreat, surrounded by witnesses, conducting a training seminar for corporate security personnel. The case was closed after 3 weeks. No arrests were made. The following spring, Cole sold Sterling and Associates and moved to Montana permanently. He opened a small consulting firm specializing in outdoor survival training and corporate retreat security. He married Sarah Chen, Detective Chen's younger sister, in a small ceremony overlooking Glacier National Park. They lived quietly, peacefully, far from the urban chaos where Cole's old life had unraveled and been rebuilt. Vanessa had been right about one thing. He wasn't the same man she'd married 16 years ago. That man had believed in playing by the rules, in trusting the system to deliver justice. This man knew better, and slept peacefully every night, knowing that the world was a safer place without Vanessa Blackwood in it.